Welcome to U.S. Immigrant Journey, Opportunities and Challenges.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to U.S. Immigrant Journey, Opportunities and Challenges with Attorney Edwin Fogam. Edwin is the founder of Fogam and Associates and has spent nearly 3 decades helping immigrants navigate some of the most difficult situations within the U.S. immigration system. My name's Sean O'Connor, and today I'm talking to Edwin about humanitarian immigration options and the protections that may be available for people facing serious hardship. Edwin, how are you?
How are you, Sean?
I'm doing all right. We've got, some jargon to figure out here too. I don't know what all of these things mean, but first let's start with, what falls under humanitarian immigration and who these protections are designed to help. Can you speak to that?
Yes, Sean, definitely. Thank you. Yes. Humanitarian protection or immigration actually covers a broad area of immigration assistance that take care of vulnerable individuals. And these include VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, which also covers men. You have things like U visas, victims of crimes, T visas, victims of trafficking, and asylum, withholding of removal, and other part thereof. So these are the main areas that humanitarian immigration covers.
Got it. And this VAWA, do we call it VAWA or do we just call it VAWA?
It's better to call it VAWA. That's
VAWA. Okay.
It's
VAWA.
better to call it VAWA.
I like it.
Yes.
VAWA. It sounds Cameroonian.
Well, yeah, it stands for Violence Against Women's Act. It's
that's right. I should have
form
known
of an act, but it also covers men. Yes.
Violent. Yeah, they've amended it, right? So how does it allow someone to move forward with an immigration case without relying on an abusive family member, right? Because these
Yes.
interlinked often.
Yeah, this particular provision protects people who have been in family situations and suffered abuse. So any abusive situation based on relationship, spouses, parents, and children of U.S. citizen or permanent residents can seek assistance under this. And there are certain requirements, of course. You have to demonstrate that there was abuse. You have to establish the relationship. You have to also show that you are a person of good moral character. And finally, there is a residency requirement. You must have actually resided with that person or in that relationship, in that domestic situation.
I see. And then is there a means by which they keep it confidential? I mean, can you move forward? If I was in an abusive relationship and I wanted to apply for, protective immigration status, how do I keep my abuser from knowing about it?
That is a very important point you have touched on, because that is really one of the most beneficial aspect of it. The whole process is done in a confidential way, both from when we meet our clients as well as immigration proceedings. They keep it really confidential. In fact, they can't actually mail immigration documents to prior addresses that were used by the same family members. Sent to those are shielded. And if it is in proceedings, like the removal proceedings in court, you cannot have that information by just checking through the court system like in other cases. So definitely confidentiality is a big part of it.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. Now, you mentioned earlier U visas and T visas. How do those work, and who typically qualifies for each of them?
Okay. Yeah, U visas are for victims of crime. Those persons who have been involved in some type of crime. It doesn't have to be just domestic violence, but mostly they are domestic violence type of cases. And they have to demonstrate that they are assisting law enforcement in resolving that crime. And most importantly, there has to be a certification to that effect. They call it Form E918 supplement. It's a form that the law enforcement has to certify that this person was involved in a crime and is assisting or will be assisting law enforcement in resolving that crime.
So like I could be acting as a witness maybe to to
Yes.
help solve
Yes.
some
It's
ring of criminals
exactly.
or something. Okay.
Yes. If you yourself were not directly involved, in some cases it's you, domestic violence or some other situation. And that is for U visa, of course. T visas are for trafficking, right? Those who have been trafficked or have gone through trafficking, serious
Hmm.
trafficking situations,
Hmm.
and they have to actually demonstrate that they were brought in through that. Smuggling can sometimes morph into trafficking because that's what many people don't understand. Even if you consented, you could be brought in, but you were coerced or forced or somehow psychologically persuaded, and thereafter the cooperation or assistance requirement for T visas are less flexible. You have to show that you have reported it and you are cooperating with law enforcement, but it is not as strict as with U visas because in certain cases a traumatic situation can be used to waive the cooperation. So
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to re-traumatize somebody, potentially, a victim. But so interestingly, the um, the trafficking, there are scenarios, right, where a young woman, I'll say, comes here seemingly willingly, consensually, and then months later in the country, it turns into oh, wait,
yeah,
my
yeah,
passport's gone. This person actually is now
yes.
controlling me in some way.
Yeah, you actually touch on an important requirement because that person has to be in the United States, physically present in the rest here in the United States. It can be done if you are out, like in some cases, other visas and things like that. Yes.
I got it. What are, when you encounter people that either, are potential victims or just out there in the world, what are some of the biggest misunderstandings people have about these types of protections?
Okay, there are many. For VAWA in particular, one of the biggest misunderstanding is that it's for women only, but because the act says violence against women's act, it's both for men and men. Another misunderstanding is that only physical abuse or actual proven abuse is effective, but emotional, psychological abuse, and this also applies in the T visa scenario as well as the U visa for crimes and so on. So for example, for U visa, you have to prove some hardship and things like that. And many people assume that it is difficult to prove that because you were not really physically hurt and so on. But the psychological and emotional aspect is important. And the real big problem misunderstanding sometimes is this confidentiality and safety. Like you pointed out before, many people don't understand that the whole of this process can be done, especially VAWA, without you involving the abusive person and without being exposed,
Mhm.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So those are some of the misunderstandings. Yes.
In the you mentioned the non-physical uh, violence or harm, psychological harm can is completely admissible as a under the U visa. I'm imagining, do you have to get psychologists and experts involved to sort of document certain conditions?
That will help, but many times it is difficult. Yes, that will help because although it's after the fact, but a most critical document or information is the detailed declaration and articulation of the applicant or petitioner's situation, which can be supported by affidavits from other sources, including possibly a psychological
Sure.
evaluation and so on. Yes,
Okay.
that's how it.
Okay. But often just a detailed written account of what I've
Yes.
been through and a sworn signature is
Yes,
enough.
that's minimally enough.
Okay.
If you can, it's very rare that the abusive person will leave some trail. So a couple of times you have some police reports where the
Oh yeah.
abuse actually went to a certain point, then that would be very helpful. Or certain cases, people sought assistance in shelters
Yeah.
or support homes.
And then there's always there's the voicemail and text messages that would say like
those are one that is really, yes,
evidence, right?
communication and
Yeah.
other circumstantial
Yeah.
evidence.
Threatening emails and that sort of thing. And
Exactly.
so that all makes sense. I'm wondering, you're dealing with these cases, you have for a very long time. What kinds of challenges or obstacles tend to come up? What have you seen? What gets in the way of seeing these cases through to a positive outcome?
One of the biggest challenges is what we have just mentioned, evidentiary proof. For example, it's just your declaration and you are explaining these details. So it has to really be well articulated and convincing. That's one of the biggest challenges, gathering evidence. Supporting evidence like sworn testimony from friends you have talked to or other people who knew indirectly or directly what happened to you. If it is trafficking, sometimes it's hard to get those documentation. If it is U visa, you can get the certification. That is really pretty straightforward if the police provide that, but you have to also show the hardship that you experience if you were to go back and how that has affected you. So generally, lack of documentation and evidence is the biggest challenge. Yes.
Yeah.
There is also the fear, right? Like we said before, the fear of coming out and actually exposing your situation.
Yeah.
Also embarrassment sometimes. And yeah.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, there's got to be fear involved. People, biggest obstacle often is maybe just someone's own fear to making a change.
There are also some legal challenges, procedural challenges. For example, U visas, they are non-immigrant visas. U visas are non-immigrant visas. T visas are also non-immigrant visas. Non-immigrant visas mean that these are not direct green cards. They don't give you green cards immediately, but after you've had them for 4 years, you can apply for your green card.
I see.
And also these two, U and T, only a certain number of visas are issued every year. So even when you qualify, you join a queue. You are in a waiting list. So the waiting list for U visas, for example, is very long. It can be about 2 years. T visas are pretty reasonable, not too long. VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, on the other hand, is not a non-immigrant visa. It is a petition that, if approved, you get your green card immediately. So that is in a class of its own.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder. Well, first of all, it's kind of disturbing to think about being in an abusive situation, and then there's the confidentiality, etc. But to find out, hey, you've been approved. Is that like you've been approved, but you're on a wait list because we've run out of U visas. Like we've issued our annual allotment, right?
Well, yes.
And so that's got to be a challenge for someone.
But fortunately, there are provisions for giving you some sort of a legal, semi-legal situation. You work and you can do other things while waiting. It's just that the final approval may take a while.
Right. So you can make other arrangements. I get it. What about, say more about, what a well-prepared humanitarian case looks like, from the outset.
Yes. First of all, as I said before, a very detailed affidavit or articulation of the situation should be gotten. We explore as much as possible any circumstantial evidence corroborating information. If it's trafficking, the route, and whether there are other things that you can use to support. If it is abusive, we look at the situation. If it's VAWA, we get those. And then those who have reported, if it's T visa or U visas, those who have actually reported that, we obtain the certification if it is available. And as I said before, anybody who can corroborate or testify or support what they know from what was going on. So sometimes country conditions can help, especially in traffic type of cases. What is happening through that particular route and similar situations can corroborate. But all of these humanitarian cases need very detailed and careful preparation. And sometimes the clients themselves don't know. That's the interesting part. Some clients who can qualify for T visas will not even know that they qualify. Enter without inspection, they were smuggled in, they are working somewhere where they are being paid under the table, very minimal amount. All the elements of a T visa is in there. The smuggling turned into trafficking, the coercion, and the continuous duress in the United States as that. Similarly, in certain VAWA cases, people have gone through serious emotional distress, abuse. They don't even believe or know that that is abuse, because sometimes it's just withholding funds or forcing them to bring their paychecks to use and so on. So the intake, getting into the background, and you create a safe space for victims of humanitarian asylum. You have to create a safe and confidential space for the victims to be able to come out clearly and give some information that you can then explore and guide them.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're dealing with, I mean, obviously you're dealing with people in a vulnerable situation, but just the process of reporting and documenting and having to answer the questions that you and your team would ask is confronting potentially,
is.
right? I mean, it ends up
It
being
is.
very
Yeah,
emotional,
it
I
is.
would imagine. Yeah.
It is. It can get very emotional. Sometimes we can suspend the intake to let them go, can
Understood.
get come back and make decisions. But you just have to be we become like some counselor
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
No,
You're
absolutely.
trying
Right.
to get the best possible way, because
Yeah.
some people have gone through a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. Obviously, empathy comes into play here. And, and a lot of times, right, we're humans are very adaptable, and you're in a situation and, you're alive. You're okay. I'm being fed. Okay. Wait, and probably someone is telling you that, they're gaslighting you. They're like, what are you talking about? This is perfectly normal way to live. And it's not until you say it out loud to someone outside of the bubble, so to speak, that you start to hear yourself and the description somewhat objectively now of like, oh, wow, that sounds crazy. I mean, that's not the right term, but like,
Exactly.
that sounds awful. And then, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What about, could you share a story, maybe an example, someone moving forward under one of these? Hold on. I know what I wanted to ask you, Edwin. Before I go
Yes.
there, when you're in conversations with people for the first time, they're thinking they're going to be applying for one type of visa, and then you realize, you really ought to apply for this one because it either fits, we can make a better case, or it'll be a shorter wait. Does that come up?
Yes, that's what I mentioned, that many clients don't, some potential clients don't even know that they qualify for certain categories
Okay.
of these
Right.
visas, especially humanitarian cases.
Right.
A typical example is the T visas. Some clients come in for VAWA or for asylum, having passed through the borders, but during the intake or during consultation, obtaining information from them,
Yeah.
you discover that
Oh.
they meet all the requirements for a T visa
See.
because they were smuggled in, they were coerced under duress, they are going through hell. So, and you look for the best possible and fastest possible route in
That's
that
what I thought.
case. You explain it to them. Yes.
That's it. Okay, now I want you to share, if you have an example, maybe, right? Someone's moving forward under one of these protections, and was there some, linchpin information, something that really made it possible?
Well, usually they are a combination of requirements, and the way immigration works, as you know, to meet this requirement, you need A, relationship, B, this, B, C, D. So Many times in most of these petitions, just for example, VAWA, you need to show proof of relationship, you need to show the abuse, you need to show the residential requirement and good moral character. So if you don't meet any of these, you don't qualify. However, there are always things that you can tell from the beginning that proving this will ultimately probably meet all of these, apart from something like relationships. Yeah. So you're right. There are many of those things, and it differs from case to case.
Yeah,
because each case is unique. You may find things in some cases that will stand out and will direct or guide you straight to the eligibility for that person, and in other cases they are different. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I feel like we covered this, but from like the very first encounter that you might have with a client, right? I mean, you need to figure out their options, right? Because they don't know, and you don't know what the best path is. And I know you're having a consult or an intake session. What is that? Is there a first step? Is there something you haven't mentioned? Maybe like what do those first couple of steps look like? Because I'm guessing you may have someone coming into you to see you that, I don't want to say confused, but is really in a desperate situation potentially, right?
Yes, yes. Well, one of the good things about immigration is that it is one of those areas where people tend to hear things, and this man abused you. Go look for a lawyer. Look for a lawyer.
Oh.
So most people who come already have an idea that they may qualify for something.
Ah.
So that is a good beginning, but it is only after we get more information from them that we can tell them, or we can actually determine whether they can qualify for one of these humanitarian provisions. Now, some sophisticated clients actually come in with a lot of things printed out, chat GPT, everything, requirements, and so on. And you have to sit them down and try to show them why this applies and why this does not. Or you have done a good job, but we still need your own unique perspective for this to work.
Right.
So it changes a lot. It's very interesting because you see a lot of different types of cases and perspectives.
Yeah. I'm curious, in terms of timing. A lot of times, and this may not apply in immigration and some of these type of immigration paths we're talking about, but other than a person's just emotional and physical health, does timing, like the sooner the better, matter in terms of being successful with these cases? Or I don't know if ironically or tragically, the longer you've been in a situation, the easier it is to build the case. Do you know what I'm asking here?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Timing is very important in almost every immigration case. Why? Because, like we stated before, if you are going to provide detailed information about the abuse or the trafficking or the crime that you were involved in, the sooner you can provide that, the more believable it will be. If you come after 2, 3, 4, 5 years and start providing information, it may seem too self-serving for that purpose. Yeah. So time is of the essence in almost all of these petitions. And the second reason why time is of the essence is that these are petitions that have visas that are issued yearly, and you want to put yourself in the queue as soon as possible. Right. You want to be in line. Yeah. Thirdly, the processing time for these visas or petitions are really long sometimes. VAWA can go on for about 2 years, although you will be able to get what they call a prima facie eligibility, and you can work. U visas, you can wait for more than 4 or 5 years before it is approved. You can also be working. T visas, almost the same, 1-2 years. So the earlier you start the process, the better for you.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
no,
where
for your own
time comes in.
situation. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to ask you about the timing in terms of how long, and I know every case is different, but
Exactly.
what's the fastest timing? If, like in your experience, what's the quickest? And I know it varies from year to year and who's in
Yes,
office and
yes,
policies and all of that. But
exactly.
I mean, just realistically, for anybody listening out there before we
Yeah,
wrap up, is it like
yeah.
it's going to take a year? Or is it
Yeah.
like the fastest you've seen
Oh
while
yes.
VAWA
I've
come
seen
through?
VAWA prima facie eligibility less than 5 months.
Oh,
It give you the prima facie that puts you in a situation where it has been determined that it
yep,
looks like you were abused and you start using your stages.
yep.
Uh, T visas, I've seen some approved in under 1 year, done, and you're fine. U visas are a little bit, the processing times are longer. And I know we have not talked about asylum and withholding of removal. That's a whole different creature, right?
Yeah.
Under humanitarian protection. Maybe later on, if we have time, we can talk about those. But the timing with that is crazy in some cases, like asylum, depending on whether you are in court or at the asylum office.
Yeah, where you're coming from, all of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Edwin, thank you for this. Super informative and important. Great talking to you as always. And I look forward to a future conversation.
Yeah, Sean, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of U.S. Immigrant Journeys, Opportunities and Challenges. If you or someone you know may qualify for humanitarian protections, you can visit Edwin's website at fogamlaw.com to connect with Edwin and his team. Thanks for listening. I'm Sean O'Connor. Don't forget, leave some thumbs up, maybe leave a review, subscribe to the show, maybe even share a link to the episode with someone in your world who you think might benefit from this kind of information. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.